question 5. Is that you or me?
Yeah, it's my turn for you.
Okay, go ahead.
So, are you closer to your mom or dad, first of all?
My mom.
Okay, so if you were to ask your father one question that's been weighing on your mind and body for years, maybe decades, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Ooh, that's a good one. Okay. If I could ask my dad any question, I don't even know. Um, it would
Is
probably
there,
be a feeling question. Maybe I would ask him like how, so the biggest thing was, when I was disfellowshipped for the second time as a Jehovah's Witness, I got pregnant when I was 20, and was disfellowshipped for a second time. And when I say disfellowship, for those of you that aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, that means you're disassociated. So the entire congregation cuts you off. When I was disfellowshipped for the second time, my parents, my dad, my parents, because they're a unit, asked me to leave the home. And granted, they recanted that the next day, but by then, the damage had already been done mentally, emotionally. I already didn't feel comfortable. I had been disfellowshipped. This is going to be a second time being disfellowshipped. So knowing that I was going to put a stamp on our family name again, and we had just moved to a new congregation. We had moved states. So I had already like shamed their name in Chicago. Now I was going to shame their name again in North Carolina. And I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I felt bad. I felt really, because I have empathy. So I felt bad as a female doing that to my family again. And
question, Sabrina, did your family move states because of your situation?
No, they had already, no, not at all.
Okay.
My grandparents offered them land so all my family lives on the same street now.
Oh, wow.
Like the whole family. Aunts, uncles, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, they live on the same street. My grandparents back in 1982, the year I was born, or a year after, bought like 8, 9, 10 acres of land in North Carolina. And they've been slowly convincing all the family to move on this acreage. And now their driveway, which was just their driveway to their house, is now their last name, which is really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, really cool. So that didn't have anything to do with it. And my disfellowshipping the first time wasn't bad. I'm the one that came forward. Well, I came forward both times, but the second time was obvious. I was pregnant. But I did it. I didn't get caught. It wasn't like I got told on and it was this whole drama filled. I actually went to my parents and I said, hey, I'm going to confess my sins. I've done some things and I don't feel comfortable with it. I'm trying to get right with Jehovah. And it came from like a loving spot. And my parents totally, I stayed in their house. They moved me into the basement. And
how old were you the first time?
18.
18. Okay. Then you got disfellowshipped when you were 20. So you got reinstated pretty quickly.
Yeah. I was reinstated 6 months to the day.
Wow.
Yeah, 6 months to the day. And and then I literally got pregnant 6 months later.
Wow.
So that doesn't line up. Maybe I was 19. I don't know how that fell. But I was pregnant by the time I was 20. So where was I getting at this? What was I talking about? Oh, a question from my
your parent.
So I know how I felt during that whole thing. Obviously, I got pregnant. I moved back to Chicago, and they didn't speak to me. They did it right as a Jehovah's Witness. They followed faithfully, and they cut off all communication with me. It was their first grandchild, and their oldest daughter having their first grandchild, and he's a boy. And not that that takes away from a girl. I don't know why I said it like that. I'm sorry. And I had the baby. I gave birth. We called them, no answer. And then we raised him, or I raised him, whatever. His dad wound up leaving. Well, his dad didn't leave. What happened with that was the congregation, which I don't know if I already told you this, but the congregation actually told me we were going to the Kingdom Hall maybe 4 or 5 months after Elijah was born. And people in the congregation were getting confused. I think I already told you this. We're getting confused because we looked like we were married, but we weren't married because we would go in together. And and we were also living together, but we were not having sex, but we weren't having sex also because I just had a baby. But in my head, we weren't having sex. So we were going together. We were sitting together and we looked like a family, but I was disfellowshipped. So it was confusing the servants in the congregation, the people in the congregation, as to what was going on. So the elders sat down with me and they said, hey, listen, with me only. And they said, hey, listen, you need to make a decision. If you're going to be with him, with the father, you need to marry him, or you need to break it off. You can't date him. You can't do both. So at the time I was trying to get back. I was trying to dive in. I was a new mom. I didn't have any conversation with my parents. It was horrible. It was a very detrimental, trauma-filled time for me. And money was low. I mean, there was so much stuff. There was so much stuff that was going on. And I broke up with his dad. I was trying to do the right thing. I didn't want to just marry him because I had a baby. I prayed to Jehovah. And granted, now looking back, it was a good idea that I left him. I was not in love with him. I couldn't be with him. Just seeing him now, not there was anything wrong with him. I just didn't, it wasn't the thing. So, but when I broke up with him, he left the state. He left the state, stopped paying me child support. So now I'm by myself. And whether or not my parents knew that or not, I don't know if I told them. I don't know if I, sent them a message or something and said I was alone. I don't know if they knew I was alone. But then I eventually got reinstated. But my question would probably be regarding that. It would probably be I know how I felt. I was devastated, and then having to find love in the whole thing was like a mind fuck. You have to realize that they're doing it because they love Jehovah. They're doing it to be faithful. They're doing it to gain everlasting life. But yes, and you're also abandoning your kid. So I don't know. I feel as if there was an apology at one point. I feel there was a side conversation at some point where it was hey, sorry about that. Maybe in a roundabout way, but I don't know if there was, but I definitively know that there was never a conversation about it, which I think is kind of fucked up. And I don't want to bring it up because I did it. You can't be mad at somebody for following the rules that are in place when you're the one that broke the rules. So it's uncomfortable for me to be hey, you did all the things that you were supposed to do correctly according to the faith. How dare you? I already knew what was going to happen. When you have sex before marriage, there's a probability of getting pregnant. So how do you even bring that up in a way that wouldn't make them feel guilty? Because there's nothing to feel guilty about, according to them. So it's awkward. It's awkward to bring
Can
up.
I ask,
Yeah.
if your parents weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, how do you think the reaction would have been to your pregnancy?
Oh, totally different, especially from my mom. I don't know about my dad. Because my dad is so like gung-ho about the religion, like to an extreme. So I don't know. I don't see that side of my dad to know how he would have been. But I like to think that it would have been different from him, but 100% different from my mom. My mom would have been super excited and loving and caring, and never would have even brought up for me to leave the house.
Wow.
It wouldn't have even been a question to leave the house.
It's so sad that they put their feelings away and they've upheld these new feelings that were created by men to then make their daughter feel so shameful, which you hold on to today, which has led you to a broken kind of relationship with your parents. And this is a crucial point in your life where you are pregnant and you really need them. And unfortunately, being disfellowshipped is never, there's never a perfect time, but being pregnant at such a young age, and then the boyfriend leaving, the whole situation is like, that's when you need your parents the most. And they weren't there.
Yeah.
And it was only because of the man-made rules with the cults.
Yeah.
So it's really sad that this has happened. And it's very fortunate that that your parents are better people underneath the brainwashing, because that makes you really love them and appreciate them in a whole new way.
Yeah.
And
not only that, but I like, minus the religion, this is tough for me to say because of my view on just religion in a whole. However, there is a part of me that appreciates individuals who like believe in something. There are, and like believe in something and then follow the rules. I think that there is, and life is gray. Life is not all black and white. And see, this is tough for me to say because I don't agree with it. So how do you agree with something that you don't agree with? But if you can take into consideration my background and me pulling forward or projecting my background into the conversation right now, I appreciate that they like stuck up for what they believed in. That's a form of having boundaries. That's a form of, saying something and then doing what you say and following through with it. And even though I don't agree with the platform, the foundation in which it stands, I think that there's not enough people that do that, where they have rules and they have standards and then they actually follow through with what they say. And, even just look at me as far as my narcissistic abuse that I endured for 13 years. I would constantly say things. I'm going to do this if you don't do that. And I'm going to do this if you don't do that. And I didn't do any of those things. I consistently let my boundaries be punched all over the place, black and blue, and didn't stick with what I ultimately wanted in my life, because of lack of boundaries, because of lack of being able to stand up for what I believe in. Granted, I didn't have a whole organization behind me, to lean on. So that's a little bit different. I know that anytime my parents were irritated or frustrated or crying, or, they could speak to somebody if they chose to. Whether or not they did or not, I have no idea, but they could have. They could have gone to the Bible for help. They could have gone in prayer. They could have sat down with the sisters. My mom could have sat down with the sisters and had a little cry. I couldn't do that. So in that way, it's different. But I have a hard time being mad. I'm sad sometimes. I'm sad when I talk about it, but I'm really not mad because I totally get it. I totally get it 100%. And I appreciate that they did it. I appreciate that they did it, even though, even though I don't agree with it,
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Another question.
Yeah.
Do you believe the Jehovah's Witnesses are brainwashed?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not their fault. Like, how do you
No.
can't get mad at somebody? Like,
No,
that would be like being
I'm
mad
right
at,
there.
Okay.
I'm right there with you.
Because that'd be like when I was in my narcissistic abusive relationship and like thinking it was love, and all my girlfriends were like, leave, just leave. Not all my girlfriends. I had 2 at the time because I didn't have any friends. But just leave. Why don't you just leave? Yeah, got it. Cool, leave.
Not that easy.
What the fuck does that mean? Where do I go? What do I do if I leave this? Well, who am I? Or what am I? Or who do I belong to? Or, they've dedicated their entire life to that religion. Plus, add this story on. They like have this whole story of them disassociated from their oldest daughter and not ever missing their grandchild growing up based on a religion. How do you say like, oh, sorry, sorry about that, didn't know, or, we fucked up, excuse us, glad everything worked out okay for you. It could have gone really bad. I could have, I can't even tell you how many times suicide went through my head when I was early pregnant, or running away, or jumping off a bridge, or doing drugs. I thought about getting wasted all the time while I was pregnant because I just wanted it to all go away. And what do you see on the TV? You see on the TV that when you're in that spot, when you're feeling that bad, you do drugs, you get high, you drink, and it could have gone a totally different direction. Granted, it didn't, but because of the situation and because of what happened and the way that I was just discarded, it could have gone horribly. And so to say like, oh yeah, sorry about that, just kidding, or after all is said and done, and my 17-year-old, my son is now 17, and now I don't need any assistance. Now they're going to come back and say, oh yeah, that was really stupid of us. That's difficult. That's difficult to say. That's like a huge ego. That's like a huge hit to the, what would that be called?
Yeah, the ego.
Yeah. So how do you do that now? So even if they wanted to leave, even if they right now are starting to view it as like, ooh, I don't really know about this whole thing. And everyone said the end was coming during COVID and now we're all alive and we're all okay. You know very well that was a conversation. They still have this story now on top of everything else of like, they have to hang on tight in order for it to all make sense, because how do you even explain that? Can
I ask, do either of your parents have any kind of arthritis dealing with currently that has happened maybe in the last 20 years ever since your disfellowshipping?
Wait, what do you mean?
I truly believe that suppressed trauma, especially something like this, could in turn turn into cancer, can turn into an autoimmune disorder, can turn into something physically wrong. So I'm asking, in the last 20 years, has something happened, metastasized into something that could possibly be even linked to the trauma that was held on to when you got disfellowshipped between
In my parents?
Mm-hmm.
No, zero.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And do you feel that they are the same parents that you have now that when you had pre-disfellowshipping, like 19?
No, I feel like they've definitely gotten less strict.
Okay.
You know, they still
maybe because they lost you twice, and maybe they just don't want to lose you again.
Yeah, they like they speak to me even though they know, you know.
You're not supposed to.
And they also speak to my brother, who's like openly just does whatever the frick he wants to do. He does no rule.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So, but there's never been a conversation, and that's what's so frustrating about that whole thing is there's never been a conversation. So I don't even know where I stand. You know, I don't know if I'm good or if just one day, you know, 62 days from now, I'm just going to get dropped out of the family will, or, you know, to say, not that there is.
Well, and why would you feel that way?
Because they're still Jehovah's Witnesses. So I don't know what the boundaries are. The boundaries have never been spoken about. So, you know, what am I allowed to talk about and not allowed to talk about? What am I, you know, like in this conversation, could this conversation that we're having live on Facebook right now be the thing that cuts me off? Like it's constant walking on eggshells as to what the boundaries are that they have because they're invisible. So I don't even know. And it's very, it's frustrating. Like even having conversations with them, like, can I talk about sex or should I not talk about sex? Can I talk about kissing? Can I talk about, you know, getting married or not getting married? Like what's the line that they have that's invisible so I don't walk over it, or so that I do walk over it and see what happens. But at least I know it was there. Same with the pregnancy thing.
Do you feel like you've been tiptoeing around conversations with them since they have? Okay.
Yes. And that's what's frustrating about it. It's like, I don't know what's better. I don't know if it was better being disfellowshipped and having zero contact. And then there's like a definitive line, but at least I know. Or if it's better to have a relationship, but you don't really know what the rules are to the relationship.
When did they come back into your life?
When my son was like 3 or something, when I got reinstated.
And okay. And how long were you active for?
I'm still active, apparently. Like I've never done anything.
No, how often are you going to the meetings? And if you're still active?
No.
No. Okay.
Oh, years. I don't know.
Okay.
Like I haven't my son is 17. So probably stopped when he was 5 or 6.
Okay. And so has the conversation ever been with them about going back to the Kingdom Hall and being?
Oh yeah. They talk about it. They talk about it all the time. And then I just kind of like, yeah.
So I think the gates are open for you to talk about them with anything. If it's not like you're disfellowshipped and they're just trying to talk to you again, and now you know you barely can talk. Your parents seem like cool people from the story that you just told me.
Yes,
and I feel like you can get away with more than you can.
Yeah, and I agree with you. When I was 30 years old, so 8 years ago, I had done the Landmark Forum. Do you know what the Landmark Forum is?
No.
Okay, so it's a crazy course on basically conscious and unconscious. It's very popular. You should do it if you haven't done it. But I did the whole curriculum. So they have there's like 6 classes. It's thousands of dollars. And not thousands of dollars, a few $1,000s to do the whole thing. I'm like making it sound like it's like 20 grand or something. It's like a few thousand. But for me, it was a lot because I had no money. But during that course, it's all action-based, which is how my stuff is that I do now, my coaching, it's all action-based. So one of the things that they have you go through is closing up any areas of your life that are like causing you turmoil. And at that point, my son was like 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know. And obviously the most obvious one was religion. And I had, stopped going, and my parents knew, but like didn't know. And I was leading this whole double life of like still going to the assemblies, but not going to meetings, or I did go to the memorial, but didn't go to the meet, whatever. And so one of the things that I did, because it's all action-based, is call. They make you call people, and everyone's different. Not everyone's a Jehovah's Witness. So everyone's doing their own thing with their own people, with grandparents or kids or, friggin' exes that left a long time ago that there's no closure. So mine was my parents. So I called them. I called both of them, including my sister, 3 separate phone calls for like an hour long, and thanked them for being so amazing. And then also blatantly told them that I am no longer, going to meetings, no longer practicing. And I put it in their hands as to whether or not they would continue speaking to me or not. I said, I completely understand the situation that we're in. I completely understand that you're a Jehovah's Witness and you have rules to follow. So I'm letting you know 100% where I stand. So there's no question. And I'm going to assume that as long as the conversation is still open, that we're all good. At any point, if you want to close the conversation, just let me know. And we're totally fine. We're totally good. I know you still love me. And I know that you're just following in the path of being a Jehovah's Witness. And everything was good. Lots of tears, obviously, lots of crying with my dad also. My dad got super emotional. My mom got super emotional, all 3 separate phone calls. And they kept talking to me. So, but for me, I think the issue is that so much time has gone by, one.
Of course.
Number 2, when I had that conversation, I was still in the early workings of being with my ex-narcissist, but I wasn't living with him. I was just dating him. So I was living on my own when we had that conversation. So since then, I moved in with my ex, was engaged to my ex, was obviously living in sin, then broke off that engagement, then started a new relationship with the man I'm with now. In between, obviously, I dated a few people that they don't know about. Doesn't matter, but I'm sure they assume. And now I'm living with this man and engaged to this man. So many other non-JW sinful things have happened since that conversation that I'm just kind of in a lull of uncertainty. And it doesn't frustrate me when I don't think about it, but talking about it here with you, yeah, it's frustrating.
But you're living a normal life, and you're in the very few percentile in the universe that actually feel like they're living with purpose.
Yeah.
It's less than 10%. I feel like every single person I'm speaking to is just, they're not doing what their heart is telling them to do as far as a job is concerned. They might be earning a lot of money at their career and they don't want to quit, or maybe they feel like they have a certain passion, but they don't want to put the time and the energy to create something, because it does take time and energy and money, if possible, to create something that's sturdy, that's going to be something that you could live for and do. And passion is in pursuing something that you feel like is your purpose is different than having a career. And I don't know about you, Sabrina, but I feel like you are in the same position as me, where living in this purpose that we're living in, I feel like it's not something that you're like, oh, when I retire from doing this, I'm going to be living here or there. And it's something that you're just like, I'm going to do this to the day I die.
Yeah,
and
100%.
every year, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get wiser. I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to get fiercer. I'm going to be able to help more people in the most profound way. And I'm just going to be, and with the resources that I'm getting, I'm going to be able to build in a really strong foundation. And then I'm going to leave a legacy, or I'm going to leave something that my future self or other people underneath me will be able to continue when I pass. So it's a completely different mindset. So I'm very proud of you for doing this, because I think that what you're doing is so unique and it's so profound, and I've never met someone like you before. So I feel privileged and honored that I'm speaking to you right now, especially that we come from the same background. and you're working in this very special niche, which
Yeah.
is really, really sought after. And yeah, you're doing a fantastic job with it. Plus you have an awesome fiance or boyfriend. Dane is just awesome.
Yeah. He's a good guy for sure. I appreciate that he was brought into my life. It's I don't even know how it happened. And that's one of the things that one of the reasons why I throw myself into the groups as far as females go with narcissistic abuse, because when you're in those situations, you don't realize, or you don't think you're ever going to find somebody who appreciates you, because you're so bogged down with all of these words of unworthiness. And literally within, it was like a year to the day almost. It was 3 days shy of a year after I left that I met Dane for the first time. That's how quickly it turned around. And I'm gonna get emotional again. His patience with dealing with the triggers, the PTSD that I endured afterwards. I did a lot of self-development, during that year, and even prior, obviously, for years before I left. And that's why I was so strong. That's how I was able to leave. That's how I was able to create a company, under the ground and get out the way that I did, basically escaped. And I did a lot of healing over that year, but you don't realize how much you haven't healed until you link up with another person. And then they start to pull things out of you that
I'm sorry.
you didn't realize that you had. And the patience that he had with me through all of that, I can't even tell you how many breakdowns I had, how many passive aggressive behaviors, because that is what I had in the past. It's cool to heal on your own, and when you're the only person you're dealing with, but those past experiences of how to deal with somebody pop back up when somebody else pops into your life. And he was incredibly patient with me and calm. And I was a firecracker, because by the time I left, I had been ingrained with being such a aggressive fighter. When you're living with a narcissist, you have to be an aggressive fighter to get out. You can't be submissive the whole time, all the way through. Once you start finding your power, you don't just snail your way around and then just fall out of the relationship. To get out, you have to build a power and a confidence within you. But I was overcompensating so much because my ex was such a powerful force to reckon with, verbally, emotionally, and mentally. I had become a horrible person, verbally, because I had to. It was my defense mechanism. And then when I found Dane and him saying things, not even realizing, we had a huge trauma. I had a huge trauma associated with him asking me where the keys are, where I would literally break down into tears, total defensiveness, and literally start screaming defensively, not just not just screaming, but defensively saying things, because he asked me where the keys are, because it was a huge trigger from my last relationship of constantly being blamed for things, like lost keys. And working through the silliest things. And he did that. He did that with me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
For real. It's so dumb. Anybody else would have been holy psychoness. You are absolutely insane. I asked you where the keys are. Are you serious right now?
Right.
And then a lot of that was also communication. I had to communicate that. I had to explain my past situations, and because of the education that I had, because of all of the books that I read, I was able to pinpoint and realize and say like, hey, listen, when a question like that was asked, it would turn into a 2-day, stabbing fest of you're unorganized, you're dumb, you're messy, you don't know anything. Any other girl would be, other girls are more organized than you are. I can't believe I'm with such an unorganized woman. It would turn into stuff like that. It's just completely unnecessary, and getting beat down with stuff like that just for misplaced, never lost the keys, just misplaced the keys. It was a huge trauma response to that. It was insane. And he sat there with me and and endured all of that with me. And, and now I'm good. Now it barely happens 3 years later. Now I'm normal myself, and I'm back to being Sabrina, who's like calm and loving and nice and sweet and patient. It's taken some time.